after e4, d5, pawn takes, black can play knight f6. Now the way I suggest to continue this is bishop to b5 check. There's plenty of ways that black can play now. We're going to go through all of them. One of the ways to block the check is bishop to d7. White now continues with bishop to c4, protecting the pawn. So white is still up a pawn. The good thing about this is that the bishop is now in d7, the queen is no longer attacking d5, so black cannot recapture the pawn. So that was one of the reasons why bishop b5 is a very good move to start this game. Two main moves we're going to go through in this video, and then we're going to go through next lines. b5, which is the best move, computer move, is met by bishop to b3. And after bishop to g4, attacking the queen, this is thematic, developing a piece, attacking the queen, and also allowing the double attack on d5 so the black can improve the position and recapture the lost material. White continues with knight to f3, and now after knight to d5, white attacks the bishop. Thematic against the Scandinavian, because it's always good to have a queen in f3. It's an open game, there's no conflict of pawns in the e and d file, so the queen is just super strong. So after h3, we're going to go through the better move, which is bishop to h5. It's pointless to go through this move. I mean, I'm going to go through that move in the next video. Anyway, after bishop to h5, g4. This is all forced moves. Bishop to g6 is forced, and now queen to e2. After e6, only way to develop the dark square bishop. g6 cannot happen. White continues with knight to c3. We're happy about that swap in case it happens. Also, we are putting more attack over the knight. We're threatening to take the knight. The pawn cannot take back. Basically, it's pinned, so black cannot play any other type of move. Bishop e4 to protect the knight is not possible because the queen. Knight c6 is pointless. So what's the only way to protect this knight will be c6. We're going to go through knight takes knight, and then d takes. This is just better for white for plenty of reasons. I'm going to go through this in the next video. Let's look at what happens after black simply defends the knight, so in order to keep the knight in d5. White continues with the thematic h4. Right, the idea is to trap the bishop. And after h6, white takes the knight. Now, only way to take back is with the c pawn. And now white continues with knight e5, attacking the bishop, and the bishop has to move. Of course, bishop e4 is bad because queen b5 check. The queen cannot block. The knight will have to go through to d7. Well, king e7 is terrible. It's pointless to even look at this. Knight to d7. And now the best move is f3. After the bishop is gone from that square, the white bishop will be able to, the white player will be able to play bishop a4 and just pile up. There's too much pressure on the knight in d7. So let's not go through that move here. After knight e5 attacking the bishop, what happens after bishop h7? Same stuff. Queen b5. There's basically no difference. Knight d7 and bishop a4 wins for white. So let's make a recap and go to the next line. D5 and then take, and now knight f6. So here we will, in this video, we're watching bishop b5 check, and this is being met by bishop d7, right? We're going to go through the next variation like c6 and knight d7 in the next video. Now the white player goes back to c4 with the bishop, meaning that black cannot recapture the pawn in d5 as we stated before. Earlier we went through b5. So what happens after e6? So think about it, this actually makes sense. Also because, well, you can't really play knight c6 and you don't want to develop the bishop to g6, to g7. We'll see this in the next video. Let's look at e6 now. White continues with queen e2. There's no need to allow black to develop further, and white has to speed up development. We only have one piece developed. So queen e2, and after queen to e7, the idea to finally recapture the pawn in d5. Now white is forced to take. So when they play queen e7, for threatening to just recapture the pawn, and then black will have much more freedom and more fluid development. Now take. And now you can swap everything. So black's first move now is to take the bishop. We're also going to look at what happens after pawn takes. But let's start from this. Queen takes. Okay, queen takes. Now we'll damage the pawn structure. It's got an isolated pawn. d3 is the best move. And after bishop to d6, knight to f3, the white player will just try to develop in a way that will be able to go and target this pawn as soon as possible and go to a better endgame. Castle is met by bishop to e3. Just very normal development. After knight to c6, white's best move is a3 to stop knight b4, which would have been very annoying to meet. And after rook a to d8, these are sample moves. We've achieved what we wanted, breaking the pawn structure of the opponent. He's got an isolated pawn now. And the plan by white now is to play knight to g5. So there's just too many things that can happen now, and I'm not going to be able to go through all of them. We've reached an endgame with an advantage, and I think it's time to move on to the next line. But let's just look some sample moves, like for example after knight e7, knight trying to reach these more preferable squares. Knight g5 attacking the pawn is just unstoppable because the knight is just going to that square no matter what. So that can't happen. What happens if black plays h6, which makes perfect sense since our plan is to go to g5 due to the weakness in e6. Here's some sample moves and then we will close this line. King e2 is the best move. There is no way for the black player to infiltrate or attack the e file because of the pawn. So king e2 is fine. We don't need the castle. We can develop. We can start pushing side pawns. After g5, h3 is the best move. Stop the pawn from misplacing our knight. Our knight is fine in f3. And after knight to d5, how to mate this move? We just leave it like that. Knight e4, improving the position of our pieces. Well, black taking the bishop just allows the activation of our king even more. So let's look at this move, knight f4, which is check, attack, trying to win a pawn and basically winning the bishop like that. Take, and after rook takes, white continues with c3. So that's how it's an endgame. So there's no much to do. Knight to e5, the idea to break the pawn structure. Knight takes, then we're forced to take with the pawn. In this case, we just have to take the knight. So that's, we just gotta safeguard our pawn structure and play it like that. And after bishop e5, f3 is the best move for white to defend the knight so that you can push d4. After b6, best move by black. Idea potential of playing c5 later on. It's all a matter of tempos now. Rook a2 e1 is the best move. And after c5, b4 is best for white. White's threatening to just win a pawn for free. And in case the bishop were to take in c3 after all the swaps, then rook to c1 gives white much better chances. Taking the pawn is met by taking with the a pawn, allowing the rook to reach the open file potentially.